Okay, guys, this is our last FSA practice video of the year. So we're going to go through what you're going to do on Wednesday and Thursday. This is like one full session. It's like 40 questions. I think your test is only like 30 and 30, but let's go through this. Now, some of these questions have been familiar. We've practiced some of these throughout the year, so I want you guys to pause, try to get your answer, and then I'm going to quickly tell you what the answer is and kind of tell you why. I haven't looked at all of these, so hopefully I'll know the right answers. All right, so pause and take a look at number one. Okay, number one is that ecosystem question. Remember, like the grass is eaten by the grasshoppers and the rabbits. Corn is eaten by the squirrels and beetles. Grasshoppers, beetles, and crickets all eat the birds. Squirrels, birds, and rabbits are all eaten by the foxes and coyotes. So basically, what effect would the pesticides have on the ecosystem? Your answer would be A. There would be a decrease in the cricket population. Because if a pesticide were to kill off part of the beetle population, birds would be forced to consume more crickets. So you got to think deep about some of these, okay? Take a look, pause the video, and do number two. Okay, you have to know, this is just a vocabulary question, right? You have to know what a herbivore is. They only eat plants. So your answer would be, our herbivores would be grasshoppers and crickets, which would be B. Eating corn and grass. Yeah, the grasshoppers and crickets eat the corn and grass, right? Now, don't get that confused. I almost confused myself there for a second because corn and grass would be what they eat, right? But it wants to know, describe who they are, is what the question was. So that's how you can miss number two, right? Okay, pause and do number three. Okay, your answer to number three is A. And remember, the relationship between plants and animals. Animals breathe in oxygen and breathe out carbon dioxide in a process called respiration, right? Plants use the carbon dioxide that the animals exhale, the process of photosynthesis, and convert it into oxygen. All right, let's keep going. Okay, pause and take a look at number four. Okay, remember, whenever you see Earth's axis, think of 23.4 degrees. So it's got to be at an angle, right? So your answer to number four is A, because this is the angle, right? And just remember, I mean, the Earth doesn't spin like upside down, right? This would be if it was straight up and down like 90 degrees, right? And it would be impossible for it to do whatever that is. So try to remember if you see a question about the Earth's axis, 23 degrees, and just know that it's on kind of like an angle like that, right? All right, number five. What should be included in your hypothesis? The answer is A. A hypothesis should tell what you think is going to happen and why, right? All of these other ones are talking about things that happen later. Remember, hypothesis happens before, and it's before you do anything, right? Number six, pause and do it. The answer to number six is B. And just remember, tides are caused by the moon's gravity and the sun's gravity pulling on ocean waters. So if you saw the word sun in here for high and low tide, that could be the answer too. But don't get confused. It's not the Earth's rotation. It's not the wind. It's not the change in temperature. It's the moon and sun's gravity that can affect it. So your answer would be B. All right, number seven, pause and take a look. All right, the answer to number seven is B, 1 Martian year. A year is determined by the number of days it takes for a body to make 1 revolution around the sun. So a Martian year would be the number of days it takes for Mars to orbit the sun. So you got to read that question closely, right? You know, a season is a part of a year, a month is a part, and a day, you know, that is not long enough at all, right? Number 8, pause and do it. Okay, the keyword is food chain, right? What does it show? It shows A, the flow of energy between organisms, right? Something eats something else, eats something else, eats something else, eats something else. All right, try number 9. Right when you see this most likely, just know that a lot of these answers are going to be right, and you have to pick the one that makes the most sense, right? So lions live in savannas and grasslands. There aren't tons of trees and all kinds of stuff for it to hide. So the most likely reason it has that color is A, it allows the lion to hide within the grass so that it can catch its food, right? Don't get confused. Light color reflects the heat from the sun. I mean, that probably happens, right? But that's not it's called the adaptation we were talking about yesterday. Remember? Helps it attract mates and it allows them to run faster than their prey. I mean, it could maybe be C, but definitely not D. Doesn't make sense. So remember, most likely, you got to pick the one that makes the most sense, right? All right, number 10 is Mario not applying work to a book? I kind of feel like work is the same thing as the word force, like force. So your answer would be B, because when he lets it go, it falls to the floor. Well, he's not putting any more force on it, right? All the other ones, he's pushing or touching or holding or doing something with it, right? All right, number 11. Let's see. Wind farms are one source of alternate energy that can be used in place of fossil fuels. The amount of energy a wind farm produces is determined by this is not a trick question, people. Wind farms, the amount of energy a wind farm can produce, it depends on how windy it is, right? Don't let any of those other ones, because you'll see sunlight and you'll think sunlight, energy. Got to look at the words, right? All right, number 12 is a vocabulary question. You got to know what carnivore is, right? And then all of the following except. That means you're looking for the one it wouldn't eat, right? And the answer would be B. A carnivore eats meat. So they would eat rabbits and fish and deer, but they're not going to eat acorns. All right, number 13. How fast a boy can run. There's only one way to do that, right? And that is with the stopwatch to time it. Now, don't get confused. You might need the meter stick too to find out how far the meters are, right? But just because you use that meter stick's not going to tell you how fast the kid did it, right? So don't see 100 meters and measure and think you need a meter stick. This is how they trick you with these questions if you don't read them slowly, because you guys will pick out the word measure and 100 meters and think, I need a meter stick. That's not what the question's asking you, right? All right, number 14. Students have just completed a lab. What can they do to be sure their results are reliable? Reliable is the key word, right? And the answer is A. Remember, if you do an experiment just once and you don't do multiple trials, you don't know it's reliable, right? Because what if something different happens the next time? And what if you did it wrong? So remember, and all the rest of these, compare the data they collected in similar experiments. That's not going to make sure it's reliable. If it's similar experiment, that means the same thing as saying it's a different experiment, right? Because similar just means it's kind of the same. Unless you do the exact same thing, it can't be reliable. So the only way to do it again is to repeat the lab. Measure all of the results twice with two different rulers. A C doesn't make sense. Make sure that the results confirm your hypothesis isn't always going to be correct, right? It's okay that your hypothesis is wrong. Remember that in science, because your hypothesis is what you think is going to happen. So either prove it right or prove it wrong, but it's not bad either way. All right, to number 15. What would be the best material to make a cooking pot? So when you think cooking pot, it's something that's got to be able to get hot, right? Well, rubber does the exact opposite, right? Plastic would melt. Cement would be really, really heavy and hard to use. So your answer would be copper. All right, do number 16. Pause the video. Flowers, trees, and shrubs are all examples of what? Don't let this confuse you because you see carnivores and herbivores and you think you want, definitely not predators. But remember, any plants, whenever you see a question in the science test that tells you about plants, they're almost always looking for producers. Producers is the answer. They're all examples of producers. Because remember, these are the things that eat the meat and eat the plants, right? They're not an example of the plant, right? Okay. See, I hope you guys are seeing a lot of these questions are the words, right? You got to look close at the words. All right, do number 17. Why can a person see their reflection in a mirror? And your answer is B. Light is reflected off the mirror back towards the person standing in front of it, right? And if you look, when you see refracted, that's something different. Light bends, it doesn't bend. Scattered when it's a backwards image. So you got to just know that reflection, right, is when the light is reflected off the mirror and standing in front, right? Because it's you when you move, just like me in the screen, right? All right, number 18. After begins to droop and turn brown, how did the environment change? Okay, your answer to number 18, if you paused and figured it out, is A. Remember, whenever you see a tropical flower, remember in the tropics, it rains a lot. They get a lot of water. So if you're only watering your plants 2 to 3 times per week, that is why anytime a plant turns brown, it's almost always because it's not getting enough water. I know from my orchid garden. So look for the keywords there. All right. Number 19 is asking you to how many planets there are. Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That would be something to maybe memorize for your test because there'll be a question about it. I'm sure you guys have ways to remember those, but just try to remember that. All right, what type of satellite is Pluto? Pause and try to get your answer. Pluto is a dwarf planet. Pluto was originally classified as a planet in 2006. It was changed to a dwarf planet because other similar type objects orbiting it very close. Because of other similar objects orbit. So I guess there was a lot of things orbiting that looked a lot like it, so they made it. It was a little too small. All right, pause and do number 21. How do algae produce energy? You got to remember, algae is basically a type of plant, right? You got to know that. Kind of grows in there under rocks in the water and stuff. So an algae undergoes photosynthesis just like a plant. That would be your answer. All right. Do number 22. The variable you have to know is the thing that basically that gets changed. So the thing that's changing in here is the window cleaner used. So number 22 would be B. All right, do number 23. Okay, so a cart that is empty and a cart that is full. Why is it more difficult to push a cart that's full? And your answer would be B. The full cart has a greater mass than the empty cart, so it's heavier, right? All right, do number 24. The 24 is pretty complicated. You got to take a long time and look at it, but your answer is D. And your answer is D because the person's mass would be unchanged because right here in mass, it says mass is the amount of matter. Mass only changes when mass is added or removed. So just because you're on a different planet, your mass wouldn't change. Now, weight says the gravity pulls down. The gravity there is more than the object's weighs. And you can see here's Earth and here's Neptune. So the weight would increase if you went to Neptune. But right when you see here where it says the mass only changes when it's added, then you know the mass does not go, the mass doesn't change. So that eliminates A and B because A and B says the mass would increase and decrease. Well, the mass stays the same. C says the mass would increase. So that can't be it either. So the key is to take your time and look at each one of those, right? Because if you read mass and see that the mass stays the same, D is the only answer that it could be. We're going to skip number 25 because you need a ruler. All right, do number 26. Okay, so here is the heights of the dogs, and here is the pitch or the sound of their bark. So the answer to number 26 is C. The bigger the dog, the lower their pitches. So see, like the Great Dane is the biggest, and they make the deepest, quietest bark. The Chihuahua is the smallest, and at 17 makes the highest bark, right? All right, pause and do number 27. How are we able to see the moon on a dark night? You have to know the moon is a dark place. It reflects light from the sun. That's how we see it. And some of these say moon reflects heat from the sun. That's not true. It's the light. So don't let those words confuse you. All right, pause and do number 28. So it wants to know which way C is going to go. So A is going this way, which is clockwise. So B would then go this way, which is counter. So C would then go this way, which is clockwise. So your answer would be D. All right, do number 29. Okay, underground water is stored underground as well as ocean and caps. Such underground water reservoirs. You got to know what those means, and those are aquifers. I mean, just no storage tanks doesn't even sound right. Evaporators is when water disappears, and runoff is kind of like when dirt and stuff run off like a hill or water runs out of something. So that wouldn't be right. You've got to know aquifers. Write that one down, memorize that word. All right, number 30, pause and get your answer. Okay, you have to know what changes as the water becomes ice and then melts back. What is changing there is A, the amount of energy in the water is what's changing. The amount of water doesn't change if it melts. The number of molecules stays the same, and the mass of the molecules, I guess it'd still say the same, right? Frozen or water, I don't know. But remember, all that changing, it's energy. All right, do number 31. Okay, so based on the data, what can be concluded about the relationship between weight and jumping height? Your answer for number 31 is A. The more a person weighs, the higher he or she could jump. So the person that's the heaviest is Isaac, and he goes 1.93. Person that's the lightest is Sarah, and she goes 1.35. So don't let that trick you, the chart, because you kind of would think like the heavier person wouldn't be able to jump as high, but that ain't what the chart says, right? All right, do number 32. The answer is A. Remember, the equator gets the most direct sunlight, so that's how the poles can stay frozen, right? Because the sun shines in the middle of the planet and doesn't hit the poles that are at the top and the bottom, right? All right, number 33, do it. 33 can be caused, a tsunami can be caused by all of those, right? All right, number 4, pause and do it. Protect your eyes. Definitely not gloves. Now, don't get confused because we got eye wash and glasses on here. Glasses don't protect your eyes. And eye wash is what you do after your eyes haven't been protected to clean them out, right? So the answer is clearly goggles. But if you go too quick and you see protect your eyes, you circle glasses, that ain't the best answer. Be sure you take your time and read them slowly. Do number 35. We did this one yesterday in class, right? Except now it's the opposite. We talked about this. This is a push. Don't let this box confuse you. The force is wherever the arrow is, right? If it was gravity, it would probably go like this. Friction would be hitting the ground this way, and a pull would be out here, right? Remember that arrow is how it's affecting the box. Number 36. Best way. Best way. So all of these are ways to do it. I mean, you could taste them. You could smell them. You could add the baking soda to see which one happened, right? But the best way, whenever they give you a choice that says ask your teacher, the label, that's always going to be the answer. Now, you could probably smell each one of them And that would probably be the quickest way, right? But they want to know that you were prepared ahead of time and labeled them so you didn't have to do something like that. Because what if you're using dangerous chemicals? Should you be smelling those? So remember, the scientific practice is to label ahead of time, right? So for this purpose of this test, if you see like ask your teacher to help you or ask your teacher for those kind of, it's always going to be the answer, right? Number 30. Ooh, I made a mess. Number 37. Which of the following does not represent a physical change? The answer is a spoiling apple. Let's see what it says about that one. Spoiling apple is a chemical change, right? One substance changed into another. Dissolving both sand and water refers to a physical change. Pulverized rock is a physical change. So don't let any of that confuse you, okay? Spoiling apple is a chemical change. All right, do number 38. What purpose does the layer of blubber serve? 100%. The reason is to preserve your body heat. The bigger you are, the warmer you are. I'm always very hot. Luke is always very cold. Well, I'm 10 times Luke's size, so that's why. Now, don't get it confused. It doesn't help you find food or protect you. I guess it could protect you because you're bigger. But remember, the purpose of the blubber is to keep you warm. All right, number 39. What does not need to be done after performing an experiment? Well, you should wash your hands. Brush your hair, clean up an area. You definitely need to do that. Complete the lab assignment. Now, that was kind of a goofy answer. Don't get goofy with that one and like make a silly mistake though, right? Because you like don't have to brush your hair after an experiment. That was kind of silly. What's going on here? All right, do number 40. Okay, cacti, like a cactus, fold in their outer skin. They live in the desert. The answer is to allow them to absorb the water. Now, you might think it's to protect them from predators. I could see how you would think that. Allow them to absorb nutrients from the air. I mean, none of those are horrible answers that you could even allows them to grow tall. I mean, I guess all of those could be choices, right? But you have to think. When you hear cactus, you should probably think desert and probably think the number one adaptation that cactus is going to make is that it probably needs to try to, when it gets water, it needs to hold on to it, right? So the most logical one would be something about storing water, right? All right, do number 41. So the position of the Earth in its orbit around the sun is the most responsible factor to figure out which season it would be. All right, 3 more. Do number 42. So if you have stuff left over, you should dispose of the solution according to the local disposal procedures. Whenever it tells you to follow the directions, that's basically saying follow the directions, right? That's going to be the answer. Now, probably, you guys will probably do B. You probably just rinse it down the sink and be done with it, right? That's probably what I would do. But remember, for the purpose of this test and for science work and science experiments, always following the proper procedure. Now, B might be the procedure, right? But A is a way better answer, right? I mean, you could put them in a container that's secured and then throw them away. That might be the procedure too. You may store them and put them in a place for later use. That totally could be the answer. But remember, these kind of questions, it's always about following directions, asking your teacher, following procedures. So whenever you see a choice that tells you to follow the procedures or follow the directions, that's going to be the answer. All right, number 43, go. Compared to fresh water, the freezing point of seawater is, the answer to this is B and lower. And I didn't know this. So it says the freezing point of seawater is lower than fresh water because seawater is more dense. It's heavier. It's more dense because it has more salt in it. So it basically says fresh water would freeze at 0 degrees Celsius and Seawater would be -2. So it's not that big of a difference, but it is 2 degrees. All right, and do number 44. So you need to know sedimentary rock. Layering happens, cementation happens, and compaction all happens, right? So all of those are good, except heat does not have an effect on it. The formation of sedimentary rock does not include heat. Sedimentary rocks are formed by sediments that get deposited, right? So, there's not any heat involved there. It's all about weathering and washing away and then rebuilding up, right? Compaction is when things get compact back together. Cementation is when it gets put back together, and layering is things on top of things. All right, people. So I hope that helped you practice. Try to practice some of those vocabulary words. Remember, the key to this test is reading the questions closely and picking the answers that make the most sense. I hope you guys see why we wanted you to watch those videos that showed the first and second, third grade tests, because if you just look for the key words and pick the answers that look right and don't read all the words, you can easily pick wrong choices. Let us know if you have any questions.